Have you ever wondered who you really are when the noise in your head finally stops? Not the voice that argues, doubts, compares, and pretends, but the presence behind it. The truth is brutal. Most people have never met their real self, only the mask their ego built to survive. But that ends here. In this journey, you won't just learn how to silence that voice, you'll erase its control. You'll discover how to awaken the hidden force Thoth called the inner sun, the part of you that sees through illusion and bends reality from the inside out. Stay until the end, because what you're about to experience isn't motivation. It's the dismantling of everything false inside you, until only the eternal remains. You've been told that finding yourself is about peace, about quieting your mind, sitting still, and breathing deeply until everything feels light again. But that's a lie the ego tells you to keep control, because true silence, the silence Thoth spoke of, is not calm at first. It's chaos, collapsing. It's the breaking of illusions. It's the moment when everything you thought you were begins to dissolve. And for the first time, your real soul starts to whisper back. Today, I'll show you how to silence the voice that's been pretending to be you your entire life, and how to awaken the real presence that lives beyond thought, the eternal spark that Thoth called the light within the shadow. Before we begin, write this in the comments right now. I choose silence over illusion, because that single choice begins the entire transformation. And if you want to walk the hidden path of Thoth, not as a follower, but as one who remembers, subscribe now and become part of this channel's inner circle. The teachings shared here are not for the curious, but for those ready to remember who they are. The ego's greatest trick is to sound like truth. It uses your voice, your memories, your fears. It tells you what's safe, what's wrong, what's impossible. It creates a world of noise so loud that you forget the existence of silence itself. Thoth taught that the ego is a mirror made of smoke. It reflects what's inside you, but it never lets you touch the real image. When you start seeing that, the smoke begins to fade, and behind it, you find something ancient, a consciousness that has been watching quietly, waiting for you to notice. Silencing the ego doesn't mean destroying it. It means understanding it, because the ego is not evil, it's just afraid. It was built from every moment you felt alone, every time you had to pretend to survive. It became the armor that kept your light safe inside. But when that armor becomes your identity, you forget that you are not the armor, you are the fire beneath it. Thoth called this stage the cracking of the vessel. When the outer shell begins to break, the inner light starts to flow through. The first step of Thoth's method is observation. You cannot silence what you don't see. Every time a thought rises, I can't do this. They don't understand me. I'm not enough. Don't fight it. Just look at it. Don't label it. Don't resist it. Just see it as a sound echoing through your mind. That simple act turns you from the voice into the listener. And the listener is always closer to the soul than the speaker. Imagine this. You are standing in front of a mirror, and suddenly you realize the reflection is moving before you do. That's what happens when you observe the ego. You notice that it acts on its own. It's not you. It's a memory pretending to be alive. When that realization hits, even for a moment, your consciousness expands beyond it. You taste freedom. Thoth said that silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of awareness. It's when you stop reacting and start remembering. When your mind becomes still, not because it's empty, but because it's aligned with something infinitely larger than thought. That's the beginning of connection with the true soul. You don't have to find it. It's been here all along, watching through your eyes. The second step of Thoth's method is alignment. Once you start observing, you must choose where your energy belongs. Every time you believe a thought born from fear, you feed the ego. Every time you breathe deeply and stay aware, you feed the soul. Alignment is the art of choosing your silence over your noise. You can't silence the ego by fighting it, only by starving it of attention. Thoth described the soul as a current of gold beneath a river of mud. The more you let the river calm, the more the gold begins to shine through. You don't need to clean the river instantly. You just need to let it settle. That's what awareness does. It settles the current, and one day, without effort, you look inside and see the golden reflection of who you've always been. The third step is remembrance. The soul doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symbols, in sensations, in deep knowing. Sometimes you'll feel it as warmth in your chest, or a sudden sense of peace that appears for no reason. Don't chase it. Stay with it. The more you stay, the more it grows. The voice of the ego becomes weaker. The whisper of the soul becomes your natural language again. When you remember your soul, life starts to rearrange itself around your truth. You no longer react to chaos because you realize chaos was never real, only the mirror of an unobserved mind. You start living from presence, not survival. You become light, walking through form. And that's when silence stops being a practice. It becomes your nature. Thoth's ancient symbol, the ibis, represents higher perception, the ability to see beyond illusion. When you silence the ego, your perception shifts from human to eternal. You stop seeing events as problems and start seeing them as messages. The people who hurt you become mirrors, showing what still needs light. The fears that stop you become thresholds calling you forward. Everything becomes a message from your soul to your soul. In this state, you no longer need control. The mind relaxes, the heart expands. You start moving with the rhythm of existence itself. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry power. You desire less, but what you touch turns meaningful. You become what Thoth called a living silence. If you truly want to experience this, to feel what it's like to live from your soul and not your shadow, begin today. Sit in silence for 3 minutes. Watch every thought. Don't chase, don't judge, just notice. You'll see how quickly the ego tries to pull you back into thought. That's proof you're touching something real. Keep returning. Silence is not a place you visit. It's the home you forgot you owned. Thoth's final teaching on this path was this: when the voice in your mind disappears, the stars begin to speak. It means that once you stop listening to the false self, the universe begins to communicate through intuition, through synchronicity, through deep knowing. The silence becomes alive. And in that living silence, the soul speaks a single truth. You were never lost, only dreaming of noise. Now, pause for a moment. Breathe. Feel that quiet space within your chest. That's where Thoth lives inside you, as the eternal teacher of memory and light. What would happen if, for just one day, you refused to listen to the voice of the ego? What would appear in its place? When consciousness begins to fuse with the soul, a strange thing happens. The boundaries that once defined you start to blur. You notice that thoughts arise, emotions pass, actions unfold, and yet something behind it all simply watches. That watcher is not distant. It is infinitely intimate. It's the part of you that has never changed, not even once. Thoth taught that the highest wisdom is remembering that awareness is not something you possess. It's what you are. Every attempt to find your soul outside of that awareness is the ego's last defense. The ego survives by searching. The soul awakens by stopping. In the second stage of Thoth's method, silence becomes participation. You are no longer trying to silence the ego. You're watching it dissolve into its origin. Every reaction, every resistance is just another echo of energy seeking to return to light. When you meet it without judgment, it melts. This is not about self-improvement. It's about self-return. The ego screams for control because it believes silence means death. But silence doesn't kill it. Silence transforms it into service. You begin to see that your thoughts were never personal. They are fragments of the collective mind, patterns of humanity echoing through you. When you stop identifying with them, they lose power. The ego feeds on identification. The moment you say, "This thought is mine," it gains strength. But when you say, "This thought is just passing," it dissolves. That's the alchemy of awareness, turning unconscious patterns into luminous presence. Thoth described the merging process as the folding of the two serpents. One serpent is the mind that looks outward seeking form. The other is the soul that looks inward, seeking essence. When these two currents meet in awareness, they no longer fight. They dance. That dance is where intuition begins. You stop thinking and start knowing. Knowledge that doesn't come from memory, but from remembrance, an intelligence that rises directly from silence itself. In that state, even the idea of silencing the ego becomes unnecessary, because you realize it was never speaking to begin with. It was only echoing what you fed it. You start hearing thoughts as if they belong to someone else. You feel emotions move through you without sticking. You stop carrying the weather inside you. That's when the inner climate stabilizes, and a deep clarity emerges. The fusion of consciousness and soul is not a mystical experience. It's the most natural thing in existence. The unnatural part was being separate. You start to feel that life is breathing through you instead of you trying to breathe through life. The universe begins to feel like an extension of your own nervous system. Every sound, every movement becomes part of your awareness. Thoth called this the return to the universal heartbeat. And then something subtle shifts. You no longer seek peace. You are peace. Because peace is not a feeling, it's your default nature once thought stops interfering. You could be in a storm surrounded by chaos, and the silence remains untouched. That's the silence of Thoth, not emptiness, but fullness. A silence that hums with intelligence. Here's where most seekers hesitate. They think the ego must vanish. But Thoth revealed the paradox. The ego doesn't disappear. It becomes transparent. It stops blocking the light and starts reflecting it. It becomes the lens through which the soul experiences creation consciously. That's when the world stops being something you observe and becomes something you participate in, as pure awareness in motion. In this stage, words lose importance. Truth begins to speak through frequency, not vocabulary. When you enter a room, your silence communicates more than your voice. People feel your presence before you say anything. That's because the field around you starts to vibrate in coherence with the soul's frequency. You become a transmitter of stillness. This is not about being special. It's about being natural. The soul's language is simplicity. The more complex the thought, the further from truth it usually is. Simplicity is power. Thoth's teachings were always precise and direct because truth doesn't need decoration. The deeper you go, the fewer words you find. Eventually, understanding becomes unnecessary. You are the understanding. At this point, fear starts to dissolve. You realize that fear was never about danger. It was about forgetting who you are. The ego fears silence because silence erases its story. But once you taste that silence, you see that what dies is not you. It's everything that was never real. What remains is timeless, unshakable awareness. Now the transformation becomes irreversible. You cannot return to being unaware once you've seen awareness seeing itself. You can pretend, but pretending feels like wearing clothes that no longer fit. The body still moves, the mind still speaks, but you are watching from beyond them. That's what Thoth meant when he said, "The wise live inside the eye of their own vision." From this perspective, even pain transforms. You start using discomfort as a doorway, not an enemy. Whenever suffering arises, you turn your attention inward, not to escape, but to see where the ego is clinging. And as soon as you see the clinging, it dissolves. Pain becomes revelation. Darkness becomes instruction. Every shadow points to light trying to emerge. Thoth's method never required blind belief, only inner honesty. If you want to connect with your soul, you must be willing to face the parts of yourself that pretend to be you. You must meet your illusions with compassion, not judgment, because every illusion was once a protection. When you stop fighting yourself, the soul begins to breathe freely again, and then something profound occurs. Gratitude without reason. You start thanking existence for simply existing. You realize that the mind never created anything. It only witnessed the eternal unfolding of what already is. That realization is liberation in its purest form. In the silence of the merged mind, time begins to loosen. The past stops haunting because you see it as memory still echoing in consciousness. The future stops worrying you because you see it as imagination still echoing in potential. Only the present remains, infinite, untouched, vibrant. You finally experience what Thoth called the eternal now, the only place the soul truly exists. From here, every movement becomes sacred. You pour water, and it feels like communion. You walk, and it feels like prayer. You breathe, and it feels like eternity, touching itself. The ego still exists, but now it serves. It helps you move through this world as a conscious expression of your divine awareness. You stop seeking miracles because you realize you are the miracle observing itself. Thoth's ultimate lesson was this: silence doesn't lead you to the soul. Silence is the soul. The more you rest in it, the more everything unnecessary begins to fall away. You lose interest in proving, in winning, in being right. You start valuing presence over performance. And presence is the greatest power you will ever hold. Yet even now, this is not the end. This is the beginning of a higher octave, because once you've touched the soul, you must learn to live from it, moment by moment, breath by breath. That is the next phase of Thoth's method, integration, where the eternal becomes practical and divinity walks in human form. Integration is not about perfection. It's about remembering who's moving inside the imperfection. Once you've touched the soul, life stops being a performance and becomes a field of experimentation. You begin to see that nothing in existence ever asked you to be flawless. Thoth taught that the divine doesn't demand purity. It expresses through contrast. The moment you try to become pure, you create separation. But when you allow everything to exist within you without resistance, the soul begins to flow like light through glass. That transparency is true power, not control, but coherence. The mind believes awakening means escaping the world, but the soul knows it means entering it completely. To integrate silence into life, you must stop dividing the sacred from the ordinary. Washing a cup, walking in the street, listening to another person breathe, all of it becomes a temple when awareness is present. That's how Thoth described the practice of living stillness, silence that walks, breathes, and interacts. When awareness touches movement, movement becomes meditation. Every time you act from awareness instead of reaction, the ego transforms into an instrument of precision. It becomes the servant, not the master. And that shift changes everything. You realize the ego was never your enemy. It was the untrained mind trying to lead the orchestra. Once you take back the conductor's seat, even chaos starts playing in rhythm. The mind obeys the tempo of the soul. In this phase, emotions stop being problems. You start seeing them as messages from deeper layers of yourself. Anger shows where love was blocked. Sadness shows where truth was hidden. Fear shows where potential is about to be born. When you stop suppressing these messengers and meet them with awareness, they reveal wisdom hidden in their vibration. Thoth said, "The heart becomes clear, not by avoiding storms, but by learning to see through rain." The deeper you go, the more invisible your transformation becomes. You don't need to prove anything anymore. The people around you might not understand what's happening, but they'll feel it. Your silence starts communicating in ways words never could. Even conflict dissolves faster around you because presence alters frequency faster than argument ever will. That's not magic, that's alignment. You start noticing how the universe rearranges itself according to your inner state. When your mind is silent, life mirrors that clarity. When you are in resistance, the world resists you back. This is the subtle symmetry of consciousness that Thoth described. The realization that the outer world is not happening to you, but as you. You become the author instead of the character. But you don't control the story. You listen as it writes itself through you. True integration doesn't mean never falling back into ego. It means you fall consciously. You fall with awareness. You see yourself acting from old patterns and smile, because now even the fall becomes part of awakening. Awareness doesn't need perfection. It needs honesty. That's why Thoth said, Those who cannot laugh at their illusions will never transcend them. The soul laughs often, not because it doesn't care, but because it sees through the play. When silence lives inside you, decisions stop coming from fear. You don't rush, you don't chase, you respond from clarity, not compulsion. Even waiting becomes an act of wisdom. The ego says, "You must fix it now." The soul says, "Nothing is broken." That's the paradox that liberates you, realizing that change happens fastest when you stop demanding it. Integration means walking through life with your inner eyes open. You no longer measure progress by what happens outside, but by how deeply you stay aware within. The soul measures time differently, not in minutes, but in presence. When awareness fills a single breath, that moment becomes infinite. Eternity is not endless duration, it's depth within the instant. As you live from this awareness, synchronicities multiply, paths open effortlessly. You start meeting the right people at the right time for reasons that go beyond logic. The universe begins to function like a living intelligence moving through your choices. Thoth called this the return of divine geometry, when inner order creates outer harmony. You no longer force outcomes, you shape them through alignment. But here lies a secret most never see. Integration doesn't make you feel high all the time. Sometimes it makes you feel deeply human, raw, sensitive, vulnerable, because as you dissolve separation, you start feeling everything. The pain of others becomes your own. The joy of the world pulses through your chest. This sensitivity is not weakness, it's awareness expanded. It's the heart of the soul awakening to unity. As the ego becomes transparent, identity itself begins to fade. You don't lose your personality. You just stop believing it's the whole story. You play roles when needed, then release them when they're done. You speak when the moment calls, and remain silent when it doesn't. You move like water, adapting, flowing, shaping without effort. That fluidity is the highest form of mastery. The more you rest in awareness, the more you start to feel guided, not by external voices, but by an inner knowing that never fails. It's as if the universe starts whispering directions through intuition. You don't need proof, you just know. Thoth called this the voice of the still flame. It's silent, yet louder than any thought. Following that inner compass turns every choice into ceremony. Soon, even the idea of spiritual practice dissolves. You realize the practice was never about doing something. It was about undoing everything that hid what you already are. The silence you once visited becomes permanent. It doesn't depend on time or technique. You could be in a crowd, and yet inside there's stillness, vast as the stars. As integration deepens, you stop chasing meaning. Meaning begins to find you. Every leaf, every breath, every glance carries a silent message. The ordinary world turns luminous. You understand that enlightenment is not a mountain peak. It's the soil beneath your feet. You were never meant to climb away from the world, but to see it clearly from within. The soul doesn't change your life by force, it changes your perception of life. And that shift alters everything. Suddenly, challenges feel like training, not punishment. Every difficulty becomes refinement. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this awakening in me?" That question alone turns pain into gold. As awareness stabilizes, you begin to feel timeless, even while the body ages. You sense that you've lived many stories, worn many faces, spoken countless names, and yet something behind all of them has always been the same listener. Thoth called it the eternal witness, the consciousness that never began and never ends. To live from that witness is to finally be free. Integration also means rediscovering innocence, not ignorance, but the purity of direct seeing. When you look at a sunset, you don't analyze it, you become it. The separation between observer and observed disappears. That's when you realize the soul doesn't experience life. It is life experiencing itself through infinite eyes. And yet the journey doesn't stop here, because after the silence comes expression. The soul begins to create, not from desire, but from overflow. It doesn't need validation. It manifests beauty simply because beauty wants to exist. That is where Thoth's final teaching leads. Creation, born from consciousness, not craving. But before we step into that sacred art of creation, pause for a moment and ask yourself, if you felt the presence of something ancient stirring within you during this journey, you already know that this space is not an ordinary one. Subscribe not as a follower, but as one who remembers. This channel is a sanctuary for those awakening the inner eye, the seekers of light hidden within thought. Silence is not the absence of thought. It is the presence of truth. When the mind finally becomes still, you don't disappear. You awaken. The voice of the ego dissolves like fog before the sun, and in its place rises something timeless, a clarity that needs no words, no validation, no proof. This is where Thoth's method begins to live inside you, not as an idea, but as awareness itself. Every breath you take in awareness writes a new code in your being. The transformation doesn't happen tomorrow. It unfolds in this very breath. The more you listen, the more the silence speaks, until you realize it was never silence at all. It was your soul remembering itself through you. And now, as this current of remembrance flows through you, ask yourself, who are you when there's nothing left to prove?